It's the 23rd of March 2019. I'm David Griffin. I'm here at Derbyshire County Cricket Club and I'm talking to
Mick Glenn.
Howard Dytham.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. This is the second interview, and in the first one we talked about your association with the game of cricket, and particularly your roles in recreational cricket in the Derbyshire Cricket Board. And also we talked about the young players that had come through the academy since it was opened in 2003. I'm interested to know what the pathway is. You mentioned in the first interview, both of you I think at some point, the pathway. So what precisely is the pathway? If I'm 8 years old and I go along to play All-Stars cricket with a plastic bat and a little wind ball at Denby or at Tintwistle on a Sunday or Saturday in a few weeks' time, how do I get to become a cricketer, whether it's a league cricketer or maybe even a county cricketer? What's the pathway? What's the route?
Well, I think as soon as you get into a club, you're on the path. You are on a pathway. Right. Now, whether that's a pathway to playing in Test cricket, or a pathway to playing in club cricket, or a pathway to being the secretary of the club, or a cricket supporter, I class that as the pathway. I'm not saying it's the right way of stating it, but I think it's...
So the engagement is everything, is what you're saying. Get them involved, and then what they do is they follow each other's path they choose.
I think the beauty of cricket as a sport is it does offer something to everybody, but it offers something. It's more than about just the playing side of it. It's the social side of it. It's the interaction and it's the involvement. It's just a great thing to get into. Like so many other things that you can get involved as a volunteer, and you've got a lifetime's potential enjoyment. And you do find a lot of people come back to it. So a lot of people that leave cricket, they're youngsters, come back, start with All-Stars cricket, and then a couple of years later they're running a under-11 team, playing for the second or third team, and they start a career again. It becomes a second career.
But what about that promising cricketer who's got that little spark that's in your second team when they're 14 and they're in the first team at 16? How do we as a county, if you like, get them in the right place to get picked up, to get identified, coached, or whatever?
I think the nominations process has been pretty robust for a number of years.
How does that work, Howard?
Unless it's changed since my time, I don't think it has, but it's probably become electronic rather than paper copy. But every June, I think every club is written to ask for nominations. The only people who don't need to be nominated are those already in the county sides.
Right.
So anybody who's district level or below, for want of a better word, if the thought is they've got potential to be at least a district level player, nominate them. It's kind of like a basic talent ID form, and then depending on where they are, they either get trialled and assessed centrally, depending on their age group, or they get assessed in one of their 7 district centres.
And who would trial them? Is that's the board coaches?
Board coaches or the head coach. Each district has a head coach.
Right.
I say it depends on the age. I think again it may have changed, but 10s and 11s and 17s it's done centrally because there's no district cricket for those ages. Yeah. But at 12, 13, 14, 15, the middle years, there is district cricket, so it's more of a filter going through. And if somebody is a late developer or somebody has just moved into the area, as far as I know, nobody's ever had the opportunity to turn down to say, can you come and look at this player, or give them 2 weeks training somewhere and so on. So I think it's quite a hard county to miss too many people, as long as you have trust and faith in your clubs that they understand the level, and 2, they put people forward.
Slight change, I suspect, Mick, from when and I'd like to take you back because this is a heritage project, and so I'm interested in what was the process. How did you get spotted?
Right.
As a boy, well, presumably as a boy, teenager.
Yeah. So it was very, very different, really, because there was no junior cricket as such, or it didn't seem there was. There certainly wasn't in Denby.
And what years would this be?
This would have
late
been
60s.
Early 70s. Yeah. But it was done through the schools.
Right.
So there's a schools association, and you were nominated by your school, and I've got a feeling they had a district school team, and then if you were good at cricket, but you had a school program in those days, so you played in the schools, and they had people that looked after that, and if you got in the schools, you were followed, and if you got once you got under 15, you then became eligible for the Coles.
Right.
which was run by a gentleman. I think his name was Frank Rasmussen.
Yeah.
It was a lovely.
Yeah.
A lovely
Well, he got a mention a couple of days ago in an interview. Frank did.
And you came down here and you had a practice, and if they liked you, they invited you back, and that was it.
Really.
It was very, very, very different.
Yeah. And I guess though we've seen, both of you have overseen that move from schools cricket being the dominant game for under 18s to clubs actually taking that mantle over. Do you think they've taken it over better? Because the facilities seem to be better, and they've got more time, haven't they, than you had at school?
I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who can sit here and say it was the demise of cricket in some ways, but in my time, I certainly think the best way I can describe it is clubs have definitely taken on the mantle of schools, both in terms of facilities and player development. And I think if you just consider that clubs have one agenda item, which is cricket, and schools have loads, that in itself is a positive move. And I think clubs have definitely taken on the work that schools would have done. And when I hear on television the likes of Boyks and so on, he's going, oh, the problem is they don't play cricket in schools. Well, they don't play as much, and there aren't the facilities, and there aren't the people willing to give it their time. But clubs have picked up most of that slack, I think.
I think it's a really interesting point throughout this project. It's a theme that's recurred. I think the only problem with missing the schools, is that schools cricket was almost enforced upon you at a very young age, whereas club cricket is something you have to want to go and do. I think that's probably the only difference. Certainly I had no choice as a 7-year-old. I had told you played cricket in the yard, and you went and played cricket, so you had and you didn't volunteer your exposure to it. It was forced, and of course nobody gets that now, do they?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of initiatives around getting youngsters engaged in cricket that are around now that weren't around then. I think it's come down a notch or two, so that the encouragement is to get children involved at younger ages, and then try and get them into a club environment. And if they're in a club environment, there are a lot of good clubs that are there to move them, move them on.
You've had we're talking on a day when you've had best part of 200 people come here to Derbyshire County Cricket Club to engage with the cricket board in a day of numerous activities. I noticed there were about 30 guys out in the middle talking to the head groundsman here, looking at pitch preparation and stuff. And somebody observed to me, "I've never seen anything like this at Derbyshire." Is this a new initiative, and what was behind it, Mick?
Well, we've always done initiatives. I think the one thing that when I first came, and I always used to say to Howard, you never let the grass grow under your feet, because you always wanted to try something new. And I think if you look as Derbyshire as a county, we've done things. Well, we've really responded to what people asked us. So we've been doing club events, and we've done them in the autumn, the last 2 or 3 years, and we asked the clubs, and they said, "Can you do something else for us?" So we came with something a bit more practical, and we've been a bit blown away by the response.
So we've had people looking at the ground and how Neil Godrich looks at his pitches, but just what other sort of things?
So we've had groundsmen, we've had a coaching workshop with Dave Houghton, Darren Smith and John T.
So that's for coaches
from
club cricket to work with county pros.
We've had an umpires workshop, so we've had nearly 40 umpires.
40?
Yeah,
wow. Getting
ready for the season. We've got scorers this afternoon with scorers officer Jane Hoff and I think John Brown is lending a hand. Women and girls workshop, we've had the guys Tom Skinner and Jimmy talking to the guys social media and marketing. So we've tried to offer a range of different activities, a bit more practically based, but we've done these things for years in different guises, but that's perfect.
That all
data.
suggests a growing link. Would it be fair to say growing link with the club that's needed?
Yeah, well,
that's important. We're all trying to produce, presumably, engagement and better cricketing experiences.
I think Derbyshire as a county, and I think we've alluded to it, the size of the county, we've got to take advantage of every little bit we can, and we've got to make 120% out of 100%.
Yeah. And
the more things like this that we can do, because the clubs and people in cricket, I think they're really all behind Derbyshire cricket, aren't they, as a county? And that's even though we're a long, thin county, you can go to Buxton in the High Peak, and they're equally, some of the players that come down from there, they're as committed as anyone, aren't they?
Can I just turn to you, Howard? Women's cricket, the massive expansion of the game. We've seen women in our academy. Yeah. We've seen a Women's World Cup here, a semi-final, and England against India opening ceremony game. Yeah. So you talked about when the academy started, women's cricket was quite a low priority. Yeah. You oversaw a lot of that expansion, didn't you? So was that a challenge, or were they just ready and waiting for you to go and get them?
Well, there was already, to be fair, in the old Derbyshire Women's Cricket Association, as it was called, and they continued as an entity after the cricket board started. So Sue Whittam was a real driving force, and you know, can't fault. She was brilliant at driving the women's game in a fairly sporadic and a challenging environment then. But she did really enthuse people. You know, they used to do their own club school link programs, coaching schools, tried anything, but it was a bit hit and miss, because it wasn't necessarily the enthusiasm in critical numbers then. But as you say, academy-wise, I think Charlotte Horton was the first player in the academy and the first intake, and then in terms of bigger names, Georgia Elvis and Danny Wyatt were both in the same cohort, who did well. There's been girls on the mini academy or the emerging players program beneath that in the past. They have their own program now, so I think it's just the fact that numbers have grown. The exposure nationally through the media has been fantastic for women and girls cricket. As you mentioned earlier, programs like All Stars. There's going to be a girls cluster program starting this year, I believe. Right. That Charlotte Flindle is heading up. So there's so many opportunities, and it's getting towards putting them on a similar footing, really, without a doubt. You know, you've got contracted players at the top end who are justifiably role models now. So it's just evolving all the time.
Just return to the DCB and your role. You ended your term with the DCB in
2015.
And what have you gone on to since then?
So I work for myself. I do some coaching for Warwickshire. Do a little bit here again now. Mainly around coach development, supporting some of the coaches and managers. Do a lot of private work, do a little bit of retailing of cricket equipment. So just trying to keep a few plates spinning, really. Yeah.
And Mick, I did hear during the DCB club nights during the winter, every time somebody mentioned that Mick Glenn's retiring or going on to reduced hours or something, there was a chuckle round the room. But are you're not ready to throw the towel in yet, are you?
Oh, no, certainly not. No.
You're still playing, you're still umpiring, you're still working for the cricket board.
Yeah. Well, I'm down to 3 days a week. Yeah. So, but no, it's quite interesting coming to hear you thinking about where the board's come to, and where it was and where it's come to, and you look at the guys that we've got, and the interesting thing is a lot of them have come through what we've done in Derbyshire. Right. So they've come through as a
These
player.
Are your staff.
Yeah. As players, a coach, and you know, I think overall, no, I don't really. I can't see me not being involved in cricket. If I wasn't working for the cricket board, I'd still be involved in cricket, and I can't think of being away from it, to be honest.
You've both been involved in cricket for a long time. You go back a long time. You've been involved in emerging player cricket, particularly. So, who are the ones that kind of took your breath away? The first, were anybody that you first set eyes on them and you thought, "Wow, this player's got something," even if they didn't necessarily become a top player.
Dan Redfern.
Yeah. How did I know you were going to say?
Yeah. Redders, when he came on the academy, obviously he's from Shropshire, but he came on the academy as a 13, maybe 14. But just the way he went into that was in the old indoor shed, and he went in there and he just played like a bloke already. In terms of just his steeliness, is kind of slightly not arrogant, but it was almost as if who are you bowling at me?
I remember a game down here when he played in the first team, when Derbyshire were about 20 for 3 when he went in, and the ball was flying all over the place, nobody could play it, and he came in and it was like watching a different player. Didn't get a big score, but he wasn't hurried at all. He is, I think, the lost talent from my own personal
without
view.
doubt, you know, it's the top 6 inches from above his shoulders were a challenge for him. And you know, you had to work really hard with him because he was that kind of character. But ability-wise, well, he could play.
Any others?
Well, in some ways, just to give the flip side of that, we've had those one or two players you've mentioned, the Paul Boyntons, Tom Poyntons of this world, who probably got the best out of themselves a lot of the time, didn't have the same natural talent, but were equally worthy and worthwhile working with, because they actually, you know, they tried so hard, they were fit as fiddles, all the stuff that the peripheral stuff was nailed on. So actually, you know, they shouldn't be put in any kind of different category from their outcomes and performances. They just did it a different way.
I remember talking to Carl Cricken and Stan Mortensen only 5-6 years ago about selecting players of equal ability and about character and everything. I said, would you pick on ability or pick on both? Said, I'll pick on character, which I thought was quite interesting. If there's not too much between the two, I'll pick on character. Mick, anyone that you saw that took your breath away, that you thought this lad's got it?
Well, Dan was a level, but I was like Ross Whiteley.
Yeah.
It did. Sometimes you thought, oh, he'll get 100 today, or he'll get wickets, he bowled. And the great thing is, a lot of these, like Ben Slater, you've mentioned Paul Boynton, you've mentioned Jake, Pete. Obviously, I know Pete be going well through Denby, Greg Cork as well. That through the club, they're still around, and it's, you know, they're still contributing to cricket.
Well, that was going to be my final question, really, I guess, is you must, when you look at the input that you've had, and I know you'll be modest because the kind of people you are, but it must give you an enormous source of pride when you look at players and think, I've had some input into the development of that player.
Yeah. What makes you sit on that, I think, when you see them still involved in the game. My first county side here, can't remember, it was 98-ish or late 90s anyway, was a side with Chris Windmill, Matt Lineker, Joe Greenhalgh, Dave Hartley, and so on. And those guys are mid-30s now, and you know, watching them still play, great news. Someone like Dave Hartley's a teacher at Trent College, where he's developing the next load of players, and actually become good friends with them. And you know, it's a while ago, but just seeing them still involved in the game is what you want to see, really.
And you're going to continue, we've already heard from Mick, he's never going to retire. You're going to continue, presumably, keeping your plate spinning?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you still get a game, Howard? Do you still play?
I played a little bit more last year than I would have liked.
Who did you play for? You played at Ticknell, right.
Yeah.
Second team?
Yeah, so I played, ended up playing about 8 to 9 games and captaining most of those.
It's a nice spot to play cricket.
It's not a bad spot to play cricket.
It's a nice, easy pace.
Yeah, the straight boundaries are no fun if you're a quick bowler bowling half volleys, I don't suppose, Mick.
No,
you never bowled half volleys.
Nice pitch for batsmen. Yes, good batting.
Well, gentlemen, it's been lovely just to hear about your connection with the game and about your involvement. I'd like to thank you both for your contribution.
Thank you.
And I'll no doubt see you around sometime.
Okay.
Cheers. Thank you.